Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's great honor and pleasure for me to be here on this very important day and celebration of European Union in such a symposium. Very few partners have as much in common as the European Union and Canada. Canada is one of the EU's closest and longest friends. Our shared common democratic values and the responsibility to defend human rights and dignity for all. The social protection our caring societies offer and the condemnation of death penalty makes this partnership very unique. 40 years ago, the European Union, then European Commission, opened its delegation in Ottawa. It was the 19th of February 1976 and concluded with Canada an agreement for commercial and economic cooperation. Very much has changed since then. In the European Union, it's a different European Union today, much larger, and in Canada also, and of course in the world. Over the past 40 years, we saw our cooperation evolving. The form was changing from the purely commercial to a strategic one. EU and Canada partnership goes far beyond trade issues today and has deepened political as well in the years, fostering an even closer political and economic relationship with Canada. And so, 40 years later, we are about to start a new chapter in this long and fruitful story between EU and Canada. Today, we face a different world. When looking out at this shifting, very global landscape and the particular historical context we are in central challenge facing Europe is now to secure peace and prosperity globally. Part of the answer to this question lies deepening our strategic transatlantic partnership with Canada. To even stand a chance for tackling these challenges, we must join forces and work together with our strategic partners who are like-minded, a common assessment of what's wrong and what needs to be done. And this is why we have concluded with Canada these two agreements, the Strategic Partnership Agreement and the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, which are, the title of the conference suggests, the framework for a new generation relationship. Let me begin with the Strategic Partnership Agreement. It will significantly upgrade EU-Canadian foreign policy cooperation in many other areas, as well as provide an ambitious and framework for cooperation in various fields, from energy and climate change to judicial and law enforcement, counterterrorism, research and innovation, education, migration, and the Arctic, and other many. I will develop some of these aspects when we are already working together, we worked well, and whose ambition is to do more. Internationally, Canada and the European Union works towards the accomplishment of common objectives. On climate change, for example, the EU has worked very hard towards the adoption of the ambitious, effective, and fair climate agreement applicable to all. We worked very well with Canada. Canada's strong stance on the 1.5 centigrades target at a comment in the negotiations was instrumental in getting ambitious deal. To be convicting, it's vital that our own house in order. In October 2014, the EU agreed on ambitious targets for 2030 with a legally binding reduction of CO2 emissions of at least 40%, increases of renewable energy and energy efficiency of at least 27%. The European Commission is looking at cost-efficient ways to make the European economy more climate-friendly and less energy-consuming. The European Commission roadmaps suggest that by 2050, the EU should cut its emission to 80% below 1990 levels through domestic reductions alone. On energy diplomacy, we work including with Canada to support our valuable partners in our neighborhood, like Ukraine, Western Balkan countries, and others. With Ukraine, we work on energy reform, nuclear safety, and energy efficiency. On counterterrorism, the EU is engaged with Canada both bilaterally and multilaterally. For example, the Global City Forum. In practice, the EU and Canada cooperate in their efforts to combat terrorism through the exchange of classified information and passenger data, countering violent extremism and foreign terrorist fighters, building on each other's effort in Syria, in Iraq, the fight against ISIL, and elsewhere in the Middle East and North Africa region, as well as on Sahel, for example. In order to move the cooperation forward, we are engaging in a comprehensive agency-to-agency dialogue, not least with Europol, which is rapidly evolving towards an EU FBI. On 27 April 2016, the European Commission and the High Representative adopted a new communication on an integrated EU Arctic policy focusing on 3 priority areas: climate change and safeguarding the Arctic environment, sustainable development in and around the Arctic, and international cooperation on Arctic issues. I understand that the new government in Canada is also reflecting on ways to reorientate its Arctic policy, and these will create a basis for intensifying our cooperation in this area. Together, we have been among the strongest supporters of the United Nations, including peacekeeping, the concept of which has been a Canadian brainchild. There are countless examples of very excellent cooperations between the EU and Canada, especially in the context of UNGAS, the Humanitarian Summit, and UN Habitat, only to say some examples. We are both generation donors to development assistance. We have joined forces to mitigate the impact on landmines worldwide. We have cooperated to tackle crises and rebuild countries after conflict across the world. In fact, as soon as the EU launched its first ever mission in the Western Balkans under our new common security and defense policy, Canada sent its contribution, and thank you for that. As they say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Canadian officials were among the first non-EU nationals to join EU CSDP mission in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, for example, also. And Canadian officers serve today in the EU's police and justice missions in Kosovo and Ukraine. The EU, through our comprehensive approach, and Canada, through your wall of government concept, both recognize that we need a mix of soft power and hard power to make a difference. As you were already said a few days ago, on the 27th of April, the second dedicated security and defense dialogue was held here in Ottawa, and it was very successful. This was an excellent platform to look at the ongoing cooperation and explore new areas, such as military-to-military contacts, policy research, training, diplomatic exchanges, etc. On 28 April, also in Ottawa, the third European Community Security and Defense Policy Symposium was held, and that's very unique. This event has become a useful political conduit to showcase our close alignment in foreign and security policy, as well as cooperation in critical operational threats. The agenda focuses on our CSDP cooperation and respective efforts with regard to UNSC resolution on women, peace, security, etc. And that's an event which was really unique here with the Canadians. And we can do still more. Not only do we want to do more, but we have the capacity to do more. EU and Canada are working more closely on a number of foreign and security policy issues, particularly with regard to shoring up Ukraine economy and statehood. So, as you can see, the long-standing relationship between the EU and Canada has not been taken for granted. And this broader political framework agreement, the strategic partnership agreement, will take EU and Canada relations to a higher level. At the very heart of our efforts to strengthen relations with Canada is CETA. CETA negotiations were launched in 2009 and finalized only in August 2014. And since 2008 financial crisis, we have made substantial progress to emerge from these multiple crises, but the imperative remains to achieve growth and create jobs. This is why a key priority for the EU is to deepen and strengthen further in the transatlantic economy. And with Canada, we have now agreed a comprehensive economic and trade agreement, a groundbreaking agreement which provides for an ambitious liberalization of trade and investment relations, very unique for the European Union for the now. Of course, for Canada, your economic ties with your neighbor, south of the 49th parallel, is your most important trading relationship and will most likely remain so in the medium term. But the EU is Canada's second largest investment partner. And for the EU, Canada is our 12th trading partner and third largest investment partner, just behind the United States and EFTA. In 2014, EU-Canada total trade in goods was over 59 billion euros. The total trade in services was over 25 billion. And EU-Canada total foreign direct investment was worth 350 billion euro. To enhance this trade and economic relationship even further, CETA is the most ambitious EU agreement ever negotiated with a third country. For example, on services, market access, and in particular on government procurement, where the opening to Canadian European bidders is really unprecedented. As you can see, there is plenty of work being done, but there is plenty more to do. As we currently stand on the threshold of a new era of EU-Canadian relations, once we have the two new agreements in place, CETA and the Strategic Partnership Agreement, and once all of us, Europeans and Canadians, are able to make full use of their opportunities, we will further deepen our cooperation across the board. Later this year, in the autumn, we foresee a major summit at Prime Ministers and Presidents level, and the objective will be to sign SPA and CETA, plan the implementation of these two agreements, and identify a new strategic priorities, such as, for example, enhanced security cooperation in the Arctic. By then, we would have built the foundations of a transatlantic community writ large. In 1961, on the European shores of the Atlantic, an article was published in France entitled "Western Unity, the Cornerstone of Peace in the World." Its author argued for the creation of an Atlantic community in which European nations, together with Canada and the United States, would act as equal partner in common endeavors. The author was the head of the Action Committee for the United States of Europe. His name was Jean Monnet. What we have been doing is, in a sense, realizing the testimony of this great European visionary and a lifelong friend of Canada. Jean Monnet recognized that there is no contradiction in strengthening European integration with transatlantic community building. Our efforts will lead to the strengthening of our strategic partnership with Canada for another 40 years, make it more effective in addressing global priorities for peace and prosperity, and thus benefit both sides of the Atlantic as we take on challenges and build on opportunities altogether. Thank you.